I met Lydia about 6 years ago at a mutual friend's cookout. She was standing by the grill with a bright, toothy smile, wearing a blue sundress that fluttered in the summer breeze. When she turned and cracked a joke about how I was burning the hot dogs, I laughed and introduced myself. One simple exchange and a spark ignited between us. We found that we had a similar sense of humor. We both loved trying new restaurants, and we shared a passion for road trips. Everything about her radiated a confidence I found magnetic. That day, I had no idea I'd be proposing to her 5 years later, nor did I know how catastrophically it would all end. At first, Lydia felt like the right person at the right time. She was witty, charming, engaging. Our friends loved it whenever she joined group outings. She'd light up the room with laughter. Soon enough, our dating life blossomed into something deeper. Weekend trips to nearby beaches, late-night takeout runs, and cozy nights where we'd binge-watch old sitcoms became our new normal. I believed I had found a partner I could imagine marrying. Back then, though, I was also blind to some of the problems that would arise. I figured her family might be a little more intense or boisterous than mine. After all, people come from different backgrounds. Yet I didn't grasp how toxic things could get. Lydia's parents, Jack and Donna, lived in a world of their own importance. They owned a bustling restaurant in town, a place that served high-end dishes and prided itself on attracting an upscale crowd. Jack would pull me aside at family gatherings with these long, meandering stories about successful business moves, expansions, and staff training. Donna, meanwhile, had an eagle eye for perceived slights. If I didn't compliment her outfit the moment I saw her, she'd purse her lips and give me a once-over like I'd committed a felony. Whenever I recall those early interactions, I wish I had called out their behavior sooner, but I chalked it up to them simply being old-fashioned, or maybe protective of their adult daughter. Before diving into the meltdown that happened at the rehearsal dinner, I have to mention my mother, Patricia. If there was a definition of generosity, it was her. She believed in giving more than you took, and she lived by that principle. Mom never hesitated to lend a helping hand to folks in the community who were strapped for cash or simply needed emotional support. She also believed strongly in second chances. When I was a kid, I remember her volunteering at a local shelter, teaching a woman named Carmen how to manage personal finances so she could eventually afford her own small apartment. Mom was that type of person, quietly heroic, never seeking applause, but always in the trenches making a difference. I looked up to her immensely. Over time, after I introduced Lydia to Mom, something felt off. Mom never said, "Oh, I don't like that girl." In fact, she was polite and tried to connect with Lydia. They'd chat about recipes or volunteer opportunities. It was Lydia herself who revealed subtle jabs. She'd make passing comments about how Mom was too eager to be involved, or that she gave unsolicited advice. I'd say something like, "Mom is just trying to help," and Lydia would shrug, "Well, not everyone needs that kind of constant input." I told myself Lydia was adjusting to a new family dynamic. I never imagined it would turn into a bigger wedge down the line. Mom not only helped strangers, she did a lot for Lydia's family too. Jack and Donna's restaurant nearly went under a few years ago due to a combination of poor financial decisions and a downturn. Banks refused to give them any more credit. Mom co-signed a loan to keep them afloat because she believed in small businesses and always wanted to help people who were willing to work hard. Her generosity didn't stop there. When their industrial oven broke, she bought them a new one outright. They never fully reimbursed her. Instead, they treated her gestures like an awkward necessity. "Thanks, I guess," they'd say in passing. Mom never demanded gratitude. She'd simply wave off their mild acknowledgments, say she was happy to help, and move on. When Mom was diagnosed with cancer, I watched her fight fiercely for 3 long years. Throughout that grueling battle, she hardly complained about her own pain. She worried more about whether I was eating well or if I was taking time off work to look after myself. Even in her final stretch, her main concern was me not having regrets after she was gone. That was Patricia in a nutshell, the kind of person who found her purpose in uplifting others. She passed away 2 years ago. For a long time, the world felt emptier, colder. I remember standing in my empty apartment after her funeral, just staring at one of her favorite lamps. I'd inherited it, and its soft yellow glow reminded me painfully of her warm presence. Lydia offered me her shoulder, but her words were often dismissive. "Your mom wouldn't want you moping around the apartment," or "You need to move on." Practical advice, maybe, but they lacked compassion. Even so, I convinced myself she just didn't know how to console someone. As our engagement approached, Lydia became weirder about mentioning Mom. We'd discuss wedding arrangements, and if I made a simple suggestion like, "Mom used to love these flowers. Maybe we can include them in a centerpiece," Lydia's face would tense. She'd say, "This is supposed to be our wedding, not a memorial." It stung, but disagreements happen, so I let it pass. Her parents, though, began intensifying their jabs. Jack would host dinners at his place, and over roasted duck or fancy hors d'oeuvres, he'd say, "Well, Lydia is definitely marrying down. She's used to better circles, but that's the cost of following her heart." Or Donna would laugh, "Be grateful Lydia likes you enough to settle." It wasn't the sort of environment you want to be in, especially when you're on the threshold of joining such a family. Later, Jack and Donna proposed hosting our rehearsal dinner at a Michelin-rated place in town. They claimed it was their wedding gift to us. Looking back, it was more of an ego-driven spectacle. "We have connections with the chef," they announced, dropping the chef's famous name like some golden ticket. Lydia nodded eagerly, and I tried to be polite. Deep down, I was suspicious, but I decided to let them do what they wanted. After all, it was just a dinner, right? The night of the rehearsal dinner arrived. I was on edge from the moment I stepped into that luxurious dining hall. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, waiters scurried around with trays of amuse-bouche, and the entire vibe felt far more like a business gala than a family celebration. Jack greeted guests at the door with the pomp of a CEO hosting a shareholders meeting. Donna bossed the staff around, making tasteful suggestions about the appetizer placements. Lydia had her phone out, barely glancing at me as we entered. She told me not to worry, that her parents had everything under control. I tried to push aside my discomfort and focus on my dad and my sister, who'd also arrived. At least I had them on my side. It didn't take me long to realize that out of nearly 60 people in the restaurant, only 5 or 6 were from my family or my circle of close friends. The rest were Lydia's extended family, along with influential friends of Jack and Donna. I leaned toward Lydia and asked, "Why are there so few people from my side?" She shrugged. "You've got a small family, so my parents filled the space. Don't make a big deal out of it." Her tone was apologetic on the surface, but the underlying message was, just accept that it's basically their event. We took our seats. The glassware gleamed under the golden light, each place setting adorned with embroidered napkins that had Lydia and Michael monogrammed. It should have felt special, but instead I felt oddly like a guest at my own wedding event. Soon enough, the speeches began. Jack strutted to the front, tapping a spoon against his crystalline glass. He cleared his throat with an air of self-importance. "Welcome, everyone," he boomed. "Tonight we celebrate the union of 2 families. Our lovely Lydia, who has been the star of our household since childhood. And, of course, Michael." He paused like he was used to applause after saying her name. Some of the guests clapped, though a portion just fiddled with their napkins in awkward silence. Jack recounted Lydia's childhood triumphs. Academic accolades, awards, scholarships, how she carried herself like someone destined for greatness. Then, predictably, he shifted towards me in a half-mocking way. "Now, Lydia has always set high standards. As her father, I admit I was concerned about who she'd end up with. We all have an image of who we want our children to marry, right? A certain pedigree. But hey, love is love." His smile was so smug I wanted to fling my napkin across the room. Instead, I just gritted my teeth. Donna then took the mic. "Let's not forget how Lydia's radiant personality has kept this family strong. She's always been our little princess, always achieving what she set her mind to. And now, we're welcoming Michael into our fold." Donna shot me a condescending look. "He's a humble man from a more, shall we say, down-to-earth background, but we appreciate his willingness to adapt to our lifestyle." A few giggles rippled through the crowd. My dad shifted uncomfortably, and I could see the muscle tensing in his jaw. My sister glared so hard I thought she might break her fork from gripping it. Nearby, a couple of Lydia's relatives whispered behind half-lifted hands. Probably about me. I tried to remain composed. Then the final blow. Jack returned to the mic, cleared his throat again for emphasis, and said, "Let's also remember someone who's not here with us. Michael's mother, Patricia. She was quite a character, wasn't she?" He glanced at Donna with a wry grin as if they shared a private joke. Donna chimed in, "Patricia was overly involved? Always stepping in, always having an opinion. But, she meant well, I guess." My stomach clenched. The nerve of these people was beyond belief. Jack continued, "She did help us once or twice with the restaurant when times were tough, but she was one of those unstoppable forces, right? Could never take no for an answer. Let's hope Michael doesn't inherit that meddlesome streak." My hands balled into fists under the table. I glanced at Lydia, expecting her to be mortified. Instead, she wore a stiff, uncomfortable smile. Was I the only one truly outraged? I stood so abruptly my chair screeched against the tile floor. The chatter halted. Every person in that room stared at me. My dad gave me a curt nod, silently encouraging me to speak. Donna's face blanched, and Jack arched an eyebrow as though I were some rebellious teen. I could feel my pulse in my ears. "Are you serious right now?" I said through gritted teeth. My voice felt raw and shaky, but I refused to sit back down. Jack shrugged. "Michael, calm down. We were reminiscing." "I'm sorry if you're sensitive," he said, his words dripping with condescension. Donna tried to put on a sweet smile. "We didn't mean anything bad by it. Patricia was indeed helpful. We owe her for co-signing that loan. But come on, she had strong opinions about everything, didn't she?" She laughed awkwardly, waiting for others to join in. Lydia tugged at my sleeve. "Michael, let's just get some air, okay? This is getting—" I jerked my arm free. "No, Lydia, not until we straighten this out. I can't sit here while your parents mock my mother. She gave you people so much when you needed it. She sacrificed her own financial security, and you have the audacity to act like she was nothing but a busybody?" Some in the crowd began murmuring, shifting in their seats. A waiter stood poised by the scullery doors, deciding whether to slip away or stay for the drama. Jack let out a theatrical sigh. "Michael, we've acknowledged your mother's generosity, but there's no need to overreact. This dinner is supposed to be celebratory, and you're turning it into a spectacle." My voice was trembling from contained anger. "I'm turning it into a spectacle? You've insulted me all night, implied I'm beneath Lydia, and now you reduce my mother, a woman who literally rescued your restaurant, to someone meddling in your affairs?" My father, quiet until that moment, stood to place a hand on my shoulder. But I didn't want comfort. I wanted an apology, or at least some acknowledgement that they'd crossed a line. Donna tried again with her saccharine tone. "Michael, dear, you can't let little comments get under your skin. Weddings are stressful, and sometimes that stress comes out in jokes or teasing. Maybe your mother did help us, but we're doing you a favor with this rehearsal dinner, so let's call it even." The sheer gall in that statement made my face flush with fury. "Call it even," I echoed. "My mother co-signed tens of thousands of dollars for your failing business. She covered your broken equipment and saved Ryan's college tuition. She never asked for a penny in return. You call that meddlesome? And then you want me to be grateful for this dinner that you've hijacked for your own bragging?" The hush in the restaurant was suffocating. Lydia looked mortified, like she wanted to crawl under the table. She finally blurted, "It's not a big deal. They're just being playful. This is the way my family jokes. Can we take a breath, please?" But there was no stepping down from this. I felt heat expanding in my chest, righteous indignation coursing through me. "You think talking about my late mother like that is playful?" I snapped. "This is the woman who taught me everything about compassion, honesty, and standing up for what's right. She's gone, and I have to defend her memory from this disrespect." I shook my head, exhaling bitterly. "I'm done, Lydia." "I'm done pretending this is okay," Jack scoffed. His lips curled in annoyance. "Maybe you should leave if you can't handle it. You're obviously not as tough as your mother." That stung deeper than any slur. The entire room felt like it was spinning. My dad wanted to step in, but I motioned for him not to. I had to face these people on my own terms. "Fine," I said, my voice calm but trembling beneath the surface. "If that's how you feel, then consider this wedding off." There, I said it, loud enough that half the town probably heard through the walls. Gasps erupted. Someone dropped a fork that clattered against a plate. A woman I'd never met murmured, "Oh my God," under her breath. Lydia's eyes went wide as saucers, her face turning pale. "You can't be serious," Lydia said, tears filling her eyes. "Michael, please, we've planned everything. The venue, the dress, the invitations. My family spent so much money. You can't just walk out like this." I glared at her. "Your family spent a lot of money to show off, not to celebrate our union. They've done nothing but undermine me and ridicule my mother's memory. If you can't see why that's unacceptable, I don't know what else to tell you." People began to whisper furiously. Donna stood up, flustered. "Michael, you're humiliating Lydia in front of everyone. Think of her feelings." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Her feelings? How about you consider how I feel, how my mom would feel hearing your venomous words?" Lydia looked at me like she hoped I'd snap out of it. Her face was wet with tears, but behind those tears I sensed anger more than sorrow. She marched toward me, raising her voice. So that's it. You're done. You destroy our future because my parents made a few snarky comments. You can't be that fragile. Her words stung. Fragile? No, Lydia. I'm outraged. There's a difference. I tried to calm my trembling hands by clenching them at my sides. My heart thumped so hard against my ribcage that I felt dizzy. I won't start a marriage with this kind of toxicity. She glanced around, noticing the phones and curious eyes pointed our way. In a sudden shift, her cheeks burned red with fury. You selfish jerk, she screamed. After everything I've invested in us, you want to bail at the final hour? Then, to my shock, she raised her hand and slapped me, hard, across the face. The impact made my ears ring, and I stumbled back a step. The room collectively gasped again, the tension skyrocketing to a level I'd never felt. My dad jerked forward, but I held him off with my arm, not wanting a full brawl. Lydia, breathing heavily, looked at me with a mixture of rage and desperation. You want to walk away? Fine, do it. But don't blame me when you realize how alone you really are. She burst into panicked tears, then spun around and stormed out of the restaurant. Instrumental music that had been playing softly through speakers suddenly felt painfully loud as she slammed the door behind her. I stood there with my cheeks stinging, the eyes of the crowd drilling into me. Jack jumped up, shouting after Lydia, "Wait, honey!" But she was already gone. Donna glared at me like I was the villain of the century. She spat through clenched teeth. You turned my daughter into a wreck, you worthless! Don't you dare finish that sentence, I warned, my voice low. Enough damage has been done. I'm leaving. Enjoy your show. With that, I spun on my heel and moved toward the exit, ignoring the stares. I didn't look back to see if the meal resumed or if the guests started milling around in confusion. I just wanted out. Outside, the cool night air felt like a slap of reality. My dad and my sister rushed out behind me alongside my close friends who hadn't left yet. I felt physically sick. My sister placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. I'm proud of you, she whispered, though tears shone in her eyes. Mom would be proud of you too. That was so disrespectful what they did. You did the right thing. My dad wrapped me in a tight hug. He didn't say much, but the gesture spoke volumes. We headed back to his car, and I took one last glance at the fancy restaurant sign glittering overhead. Part of me wanted to feel relief that I'd escaped a looming trap. Another part of me grieved for the relationship I'd once cherished. But there was no turning back. The next morning, I woke feeling empty. I brewed coffee but didn't drink it. My phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, calls, texts, voicemails, not just from Lydia but from her parents and relatives I'd never known well. When I finally mustered the energy to look, I saw a range of messages from Lydia, furious rants, tearful pleas, half apologies that felt hollow. She'd type lines like, I'm sorry for last night, but you provoked me. Or, we can still fix this if you just talk to me. Don't throw it away. Over and over, her messages piled up. Then came texts from Jack, threats disguised as warnings. You'd better think long and hard about humiliating my daughter. Or, if you think your stunt will ruin our reputation, you have another thing coming. Another from Donna read like a guilt trip. You broke Lydia's heart. She can't stop crying. You're cruel and ungrateful. Some of Lydia's cousins chimed in, aligning with their aunt and uncle, criticizing me for publicly embarrassing Lydia. My phone felt toxic in my hand. I shut it off, wanting no part in that avalanche of negativity. Nonetheless, Lydia escalated. She showed up at my apartment building. I can't say I was surprised. Her frantic texts had promised as much. Around midday, the intercom buzzed while I was half dozing on the couch, emotionally drained. Her voice crackled through. Michael, let me up. I just need to talk. I nearly ignored it. But I felt maybe I owed her a final conversation, at least for the sake of closure. When I opened my door, Lydia stood in the hallway clutching a tissue, her eyes puffy and red. She wore the same outfit as last night, a sleek cocktail dress now wrinkled from hours of crying or from tossing on her bed. She looked exhausted. Michael, she started softly, stepping forward. I never wanted things to get so ugly. My parents were it was them trying to be funny. I know it sounds insane, but they didn't mean to offend your mother. I held my arms at my sides, remains of anger and betrayal swirling inside me. Don't lie to me, Lydia. They weren't joking when they mocked my mom. They'd been insulting me and her for months, and you did nothing. I gestured for her not to come too close. You laughed along. She sniffled, tears forming again. I was scared to speak up against them, okay? You don't know what it's like growing up with Jack and Donna. Everything has to be about their image. They bully me if I don't go along. It might not look like it, but they had me cornered. I met her eyes. I felt a trace of sympathy flicker. But the memory of her slapping me in front of dozens of people outweighed it. I get that they're controlling, I said quietly, but you're not a kid anymore. I needed you to stand up for me, for my mother's memory. If you truly loved and respected me, you wouldn't have let them degrade me or her like that. And you sure as hell wouldn't have slapped me. She shook her head, stumbling over her words. That was out of line, I know. I was so upset and felt so betrayed that you'd end everything on the spot. I lost it. For a moment, we lingered in silence, the heavy air swirling with unspoken regrets. Then I stepped aside, signaling that she could come in if she wanted. Inside, the living room was still dotted with half-opened wedding catalogs, budget spreadsheets, and seating charts. The remnants of what once was a hopeful future arrayed across my coffee table. She saw them and let out a broken sob. We invested so much, Michael. We have deposits on the venue, the caterer, invitations. My parents are furious about wasting all that money. I scoffed. Of course they are. They don't care about the fact that their daughter and her fiancé were supposed to show love and respect to each other. They just care that people might gossip about how the engagement imploded. And you're parroting them, saying it's all a waste. She tried to wipe new tears from her eyes, but they kept flowing. Don't you still love me? She whispered, voice trembling. We can find a way to fix things. Maybe therapy. Maybe a smaller wedding where we call the shots. I sighed deeply, looking at her. Therapy won't undo the fact that your parents feel free to insult me and my dead mother. It won't erase that you refused to defend me. It won't erase that you physically struck me, Lydia. That's not love. That's not partnership. That's cruelty, or at the very least, a complete breakdown of what's supposed to be an equal relationship. She sank onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. A swirl of guilt and heartbreak roiled in my chest, but I stood my ground. Please, go, I said, more softly than before. I don't see a way forward for us. I don't want to do this, but we're done. She sat there for a solid minute, taking ragged breaths, maybe hoping I'd change my mind. Finally, she rose, shaky on her feet. Michael, she said, tears streaming, I'm never going to forgive you for this. You'll regret humiliating me, humiliating my parents. I swear to God, you'll see. Then she bolted out the door, slamming it behind her. I locked it, leaning my forehead against the cool wood. Despite everything, a wave of sorrow hit me. I stayed there, trying to catch my breath. Then I heard her footsteps fade down the hallway. I thought I was done with her. I was wrong. In the days that followed, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Even though I'd blocked Lydia's number, she sent me text messages and voicemails from new burner accounts. Some were apologetic, but many were threatening. How could you do this? You're a coward. You ruined my life. I'll never let this go. At times, she'd slip back into pleas. I'm so alone. It's your fault. Fix this. It was whiplash. My only relief was to keep blocking numbers, but they just kept popping up. Friends who knew her told me she'd become erratic, skipping work, railing about how I'd shattered her dreams. One Saturday afternoon, about a week after the canceled wedding fiasco, I was heading to my car from my dad's house when Lydia's father, Jack, showed up unexpectedly. I was halfway down the driveway when I saw him screech up in his flashy black SUV. Before I could say a word, he flung the door open and marched toward me with rage in his eyes. Where the hell do you get off dumping my daughter at a rehearsal dinner? He spat, breath smelling faintly of bourbon. You humiliated her. I squared my shoulders. Part of me was tempted to walk away, but I wouldn't back down on my own father's property. Jack, the wedding's off. You all saw the meltdown you orchestrated. It's over. Go home. He barged closer, face contorted in hatred. You think that's it? You're going to pay for the money you cost us. Non-refundable deposits, canceled vendors. And everyone's gossiping that you walked out on Lydia because your mother was insulted. Don't act so righteous. I clenched my fists, maintaining eye contact. Yes, I walked out because you disrespected my mother in front of everyone. And Lydia slapped me. She physically attacked me. I'm not sorry for ending a toxic relationship. Jack grabbed me by the collar of my shirt. The sudden aggression made me stumble. Don't you talk about my daughter like that, you little piece of... Before he could finish, I slapped him sharply across the face, and he reeled back in shock. His hand flew to his cheek as he lost balance, hitting the pavement hard. My father, noticing the scuffle from the window, ran out. Jack sat on the ground, rage blooming across his features. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling the cops! He roared, half coughing from the impact. You just assaulted me! I took a step back, feeling my blood pulsing in my ears. You put your hands on me first. It was self-defense. He spat onto the ground, punching digits into his phone. My dad raced to my side, putting himself between us. I heard Jack on the line calling 911. There's been an assault. I need police at Oakwood Drive, now! He gave them the address while glaring at me. My heart hammered. This day had escalated fast, but I refused to cower. Once he hung up, he pointed a trembling finger at me. You're finished, Michael. I'll make sure of it. I turned to my dad. Grab your phone, call our lawyer. Let's handle this properly. Jack assaulted me first. My father gave a tight nod and dialed. We waited in tense silence while Jack refused to get up, acting the wounded victim with an exaggerated moan. I stood a few feet away, fists still clenched, scanning the street for the police. This was the last thing I wanted, a public meltdown in my own driveway. But that's where Lydia's father had pushed me. Finally, the police arrived. 2 officers stepped out, approaching us with caution. What's going on here, gentlemen? Asked the taller cop, noticing the tension. Jack scrambled to his feet, pointing at me. He attacked me, unprovoked. This maniac assaulted me! He cried, breath rattling. I stayed quiet at first, letting him finish. Then the officer turned to me. Is that true? I shook my head. He grabbed my collar first, threatened me, so I defended myself. He fell over after I slapped him, checked for any witnesses. Also, there may be home cameras, I said, pointing to my dad's door, which had a security camera above it. The officer scribbled notes, instructing each of us to remain calm while they separated us for statements. After we each gave our accounts, my father provided the security footage from the home system. It caught the moment Jack lunged and grabbed my shirt. The cameras also recorded me slapping him in response. The second officer quietly walked over to Jack, returning a moment later with a nod to the lead officer. A hush fell across the yard as they conferred among themselves. Eventually, the taller cop returned to me. It looks like Mr. Brown, that's you, was acting in self-defense. We see the physical aggression from Mr. Donovan. Typically, we'd still fill out a report, but given the footage, you likely won't face charges. Mr. Donovan, on the other hand, can be formally charged if you want to press it. I caught Jack's glare from the corner of my eye, and I slowly exhaled. I don't want to press charges. I just want him to leave me alone. Jack pointed a finger at me, seething. This isn't over, he growled. The officers told him to calm down or face disorderly conduct charges. He finally grudgingly stomped to his SUV, slammed the door, and sped off with tires squealing. The officers left after ensuring the situation was stable. My dad put a comforting hand on my shoulder. I realized then how badly my hands were trembling. Thanks, I managed, for being here, he nodded. I'm always here when you need me. With that, we headed into the house. My head was spinning from the stress, but a wave of relief also passed over me. I'd endured one final furnace of conflict, and maybe, just maybe, this was the last time I'd have to face that family. In the weeks that followed, I severed every tie with Lydia's family. I took time to focus on healing, reading my mother's journal entries, recalling her wisdom about standing up for myself and for what's right. The canceled wedding's fallout lingered, rumors circulated, and some mutual acquaintances gossiped. Yet my inner circle supported me wholeheartedly, glad I had escaped a toxic future. Jack's threat boiled down to empty words. With the security footage and enough support, I no longer feared him. Lydia's texts eventually stopped. In time, I found peace, honoring my mother's legacy by living my life with free, unburdened integrity.